I think the toughest thing for a director to do is to know what he wants. It's not how to get what you want, it's knowing what you want.
He doesn't throw tantrums. He doesn't blast names in interviews. Spielberg just removes you, and once you're out, you're really out.
I want them to get that feeling that they have an idea, they don't know how to express it in words.
In 5 decades of shaping modern cinema, he's created myth, memory, and entire generations of icons. But behind the camera, behind the elegance, Spielberg keeps a list, not public, not written, but very real. It's short and dangerous. Because if you end up on that list, you don't just lose a role, you lose the whole orbit, the access, the reverence, the second chance, and most never even saw it coming. Jaws, Saving Private Ryan, Jurassic Park, Indiana Jones. His sets built careers, but they could also bury them. When you cross Spielberg, there's no scene left to rewrite. He doesn't argue, he doesn't forgive, he replaces. He's not interested in chaos, or ego, or actors who forget who's telling the story. Once trust is broken, Spielberg doesn't give notes, he gives silence. Sometimes it's a quiet comment, sometimes it's a phone call that never comes. But once it's done, and Hollywood remembers.
I had an actor in mind, I won't mention who it is, he's a friend of mine.
He's worked with legends, but there were 5 who made him walk away. 5 who crossed that invisible line, and none of them ever made it back, not even close. Number 1, Megan Fox. Some bridges burn quietly. This one exploded. Megan Fox wasn't even 25 when she became one of the biggest stars on Earth. Transformers made her a household name, and Spielberg, through DreamWorks, was one of the forces behind it. But what began as a star-making role quickly turned into a career-altering collision. Fox's falling out with director Michael Bay is well known. What's less talked about is Spielberg's role in what came next. Fox once said, he wants to be like Hitler on his sets, and he is. She was talking about Bay. But Spielberg, serving as executive producer on Transformers, Revenge of the Fallen, didn't take that comparison lightly. Multiple sources, including Bay himself, claim that Spielberg was the one who insisted she be fired before the 3rd film. There was no public statement from Spielberg, no angry interview, just a quiet but decisive removal.
Only the names were changed to protect the innocent.
Megan Fox later clarified her words, saying they were misinterpreted, but the damage was done. Spielberg, a man who rarely lets conflict show, didn't bring her name up again and has never worked with her since. During an interview years later, Fox said, "I was young, and I was reckless with my words." She wasn't blacklisted from Hollywood, but the doors Spielberg controlled were quietly sealed. And that matters, because when Spielberg distances himself, others tend to follow. There's a pattern in Spielberg's world. He doesn't attack, he detaches. He's not loud, but his silence is absolute. Fox once described herself as misunderstood and underestimated, especially by directors who didn't know what to do with her intensity. But Spielberg wasn't guessing. He made his decision, and it stuck. Fox tried to move on, taking on roles in Jennifer's Body, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and more recently, indie genre projects. But she never again stood at the center of a Spielberg-sized production. That's not coincidence, that's consequence. At the height of her fame, she was poised to be a franchise anchor for years. Then, in less than a year, that future was erased. Another Fox quote, years after the fallout, hit differently. "I was never Hollywood's favorite." Maybe that's true, but she had Spielberg's backing for a moment, and that moment changed everything. It wasn't just about what she said, it was about who she said it around, because there's a quiet rule in Spielberg's orbit. Disrespect the crew, and you're replaced. Disrespect the director, and you're remembered. Just not in the way you want. And for Megan Fox, that memory has lasted a decade. Number 2, Julia Roberts. Sometimes the tension isn't loud, it lingers in pauses, in what's never said again. When Spielberg cast Julia Roberts as Tinker Bell in Hook, it seemed like a golden move. America's sweetheart meets the world's most famous director. But the fantasy didn't last long. Behind the scenes, Roberts was dealing with a media storm, a broken engagement, non-stop tabloids, and the kind of public scrutiny that cracks foundations. On set, things got icy. Very icy. Spielberg reportedly started calling her Tinkerhell. Crew members backed it up. The nickname spread fast, and it stuck. In later interviews, Spielberg didn't sugarcoat his words. "It wasn't a lot of fun," he said. He never called her difficult directly, but he didn't have to. His distance said everything. During production, Roberts isolated from the rest of the cast. Some reports claimed she clashed with the crew, showed up late, or simply wasn't present emotionally. Spielberg, who thrives on precision and calm, quietly recoiled. After Hook, Roberts went on to dominate the 90s. Pretty Woman, My Best Friend's Wedding, Erin Brockovich. But Spielberg never worked with her again, not once. At the 2002 Golden Globes, Roberts presented Spielberg with the Best Director award for Saving Private Ryan. Their onstage moment was polite, professional, but stiff. No warmth, no spark.
Oh, God, oh dear, I didn't button my coat. Wait a second.
Years later, when asked if he'd cast her again, Spielberg didn't deflect. He said, "No, it wasn't a good experience for me." That was it. No grudge, no attack, just a clear line drawn, and he never crossed back. Roberts has said little about Hook in the years since. She once mentioned the nickname Tinkerhell and brushed it off as exaggerated, but the absence speaks louder than any denial. She's worked with the best, Soderbergh, Nichols, Clooney, but never Spielberg again. In a rare interview, Spielberg said this about casting: "It's not just about performance, it's about energy." And that's where it may have fractured. Spielberg doesn't just direct scenes, he curates environments. When an actor disrupts that balance, even unintentionally, the cost is trust. For Roberts, Hook was a detour. For Spielberg, it was a decision. Their careers soared in different directions, but the silence between them remains unbroken. And in Spielberg's world, silence means the door isn't just closed, it's locked. Number 3. Shia LaBeouf. Some actors are lightning. Spielberg was building a lighthouse, and for a while, it looked like the two could work together. Shia LaBeouf was handpicked. Spielberg believed in him, really believed in him. From Disturbia to Transformers, and then Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Shia became a kind of unofficial protege. But then came the interviews, the headlines, and the one comment that ended it all. LaBeouf said this, shortly after Indiana Jones 4 hit theaters. "I feel like I dropped the ball on the legacy that people loved and cherished. You can blame the writer, you can blame Steven." That sentence changed everything. Spielberg, known for keeping things in-house, took it personally. In his world, loyalty matters. Creative disagreements happen, but publicly throwing your own director under the bus, that's something else. Years later, LaBeouf admitted it was a mistake. He said, "I broke the code. That's not how you talk about your heroes." But the damage had already been done. Behind the scenes, it was clear. LaBeouf wouldn't be returning to the Indiana Jones franchise. Despite rumors and speculation, he was never asked back for the 5th installment. Spielberg didn't make a statement. He didn't call out LaBeouf by name. He just moved on.
The person who is Indiana Jones, Harrison Ford.
What makes it more striking is how much Spielberg initially supported him. He cast Shia at a time when very few young actors were getting that level of access. But with access comes expectation, and when that trust breaks, even once, it's almost never rebuilt. Spielberg once said, "There's a difference between chaos and instinct," and that's where LaBeouf became a liability. His talent was never the issue, but his unpredictability made the ground shaky. For a director like Spielberg, who thrives on collaboration, control, and clarity, uncertainty is the one thing he doesn't direct around. LaBeouf's career didn't vanish. He moved into smaller, more personal films. Honey Boy, The Peanut Butter Falcon, and independent work that showed just how much range he had. But the Spielberg chapter? That door closed and stayed closed. It wasn't loud, it wasn't cruel, it was just final. Spielberg gave LaBeouf something most actors dream of: a franchise, a spotlight, and a legacy to step into. And when LaBeouf stepped out of line, publicly and without filter, he lost all 3. That's not just a missed opportunity. It's a masterclass in what not to say, when the room is still listening. Number 4. Tom Sizemore. Tom Sizemore had everything Spielberg needed, until he nearly lost it all. In Saving Private Ryan, Sizemore delivered one of the most powerful performances of his career. He played Sergeant Horvath, the steady hand beside Tom Hanks. Gritty, loyal, restrained. Spielberg believed in him. But off-screen, there was another story running parallel. one that Spielberg couldn't ignore. At the time of casting, Sizemore was already battling addiction. Spielberg knew this, but still gave him a shot, under one condition. If you fail a single test during production, you're gone, and we'll reshoot every scene you're in, Spielberg reportedly told him. That wasn't just a warning, it was a contract. And for the length of the shoot, Sizemore stayed clean. He delivered. But the tension behind the scenes was constant. It was a gamble, and Spielberg knew it. Years later, Sizemore confirmed the story. "Steven didn't trust me. He watched every move," he said. It wasn't personal, it was protective. Spielberg was guarding a masterpiece, and even though Sizemore pulled it off, the director never cast him again.
Someday we might look back on this and decide that Saving Private Ryan was the one decent thing we were able to pull out of this hole.
What makes it tragic is how good Sizemore was, not just in that film, but in everything leading up to it. Heat, Natural Born Killers, True Romance. He had the range, the presence, the edge. But Spielberg doesn't just cast skill, he casts reliability, he casts clarity. And Sizemore's life after Saving Private Ryan spiraled fast. Legal trouble, rehab public meltdowns. The kind of chaos Spielberg never allows near his sets. One former crew member said, "You could see Spielberg respected him, but he wouldn't risk that kind of fire twice." Sizemore later admitted he'd hoped to work with Spielberg again. But deep down, he knew that window had closed. Not because of one moment, but because of the shadow that followed. Spielberg didn't blacklist him, he didn't speak out against him, but he also didn't call back. For a filmmaker who values trust over talent, that silence said everything. Sizemore kept acting. He kept pushing through the wreckage. But the gravity of what he lost, the trust of Spielberg, hung over his career for the rest of his life. There are actors who get second chances. But in Spielberg's world, second chances don't come with warnings. They come with tests. And if you break that, you don't just lose a role. You lose the right to be directed by one of the most precise storytellers of all time. And for Tom Sizemore, that precision cut him out completely. Number 5. Chevy Chase. Not all fallouts happen on set. Some never get past the first meeting. Chevy Chase was a household name long before Spielberg reached his peak. From Saturday Night Live to National Lampoon's Vacation, Chase had star power and ego to match. But while many actors fought for Spielberg's attention, Chevy never made it past the starting line. There's no public feud, no viral argument, just a well-documented truth. Spielberg never worked with him, never even got close. Insiders point to an early meeting in the 1980s. Chase was considered for multiple projects. Some say Raiders of the Lost Ark. Others point to lesser-known scripts in development. But every version of the story ends the same way. Spielberg passed, hard. One former casting executive said, "There was interest." But Spielberg didn't like the vibe. Chevy dominated the room. It wasn't about talent, it was about tone. Spielberg is known for harmony on set, steady hands, clear focus. Chase, on the other hand, had built a reputation for the opposite. Multiple directors have spoken about how difficult Chase could be. Creative clashes, control issues, on-set tension. And while Spielberg never spoke publicly about him, the absence says it all. Chase once joked in an interview, "There are people in this town who don't want to work with me. That's fine, I don't need everybody." That wasn't aimed at Spielberg, but it didn't need to be. Hollywood knew who he meant, or at least who was missing.
Under the covers right now? Did you shower?
Even in his prime, Chase was rarely cast in director-led productions. He gravitated toward comedies built around his voice, not someone else's vision. And Spielberg? He doesn't direct around stars, he directs around stories. One industry veteran put it this way: Spielberg works with actors who serve the film, not themselves. There's no deleted scene, no lost project, no big headline, just a clear, lasting distance. Chase's career continued, TV, comedy tours, revivals, but Spielberg's silence remained unbroken. And in that silence, you can hear the one thing louder than any disagreement: disinterest. Because in Spielberg's world, not every clash ends in chaos. Sometimes it ends before the cameras ever roll. Spielberg didn't slam doors, he just stopped answering them. No raised voice, no final warning, just silence. And a name that never made the list again. Some actors lose roles because they underdeliver. But these 5, they had the talent. What they didn't have was rhythm, the kind Spielberg doesn't teach. He senses it. He waits for it. And if it doesn't show up, he doesn't fix it. He just walks away. Because in his world, losing trust isn't loud. It's quiet, but permanent. So who do you think almost made that silent blacklist? Or should have? Drop your take in the comments. And if you want early access to the next round of stories Hollywood would rather forget, like, subscribe, and hit the bell for the deep dives they won't put in interviews. Spielberg never announced who was done, he just stopped calling. And that's how you knew it was over.